Chapter 4 is the most anticipated Poppy chapter yet, and if you couldn't tell from my channel, there's been a lot revealed about the game so far, from characters, trailers, interviews, podcasts, secrets, and more. So today, I'm gonna go over absolutely every single thing we know about Chapter 4, so you guys are all caught up, including some theories. So first, talking about the Chapter 4 characters, currently, there are 3 sets of new ones confirmed to be coming. First, there are the infamous Nightmare Critters, which are some kind of alter ego to the popular Smiling Critters from Chapter 3, containing Baba Chops, Icky Licky, Raby Baby, Alistair Gator, Maggie Mako, Poe, Simon Smokes, and Tui, who we don't really know much about in terms of their purpose in Chapter 4. So far, we have only seen Baba Chops and Poe appear in-game as mini critters, so I assume the rest will have their own mini appearances as well. Next, there is Yarnaby, the yarn/lion-shaped monster with an orange body and rainbow-colored hair, whose head splits open sideways, revealing their demonic teeth, and in Playtime Co lore, he's known as Experiment 1166, created in 1990, made from the child Quinn, a smart boy who, after being turned into Yarnaby, mysteriously lost his cognitive function and was completely dependent on the security staff around him, causing the Bigger Bodies Initiative creator Harley Sawyer to isolate himself with Yarnaby in a prison cell, leading him to become obsessively attached to Harley, presumably so he could take control of Yarnaby's mind. The third confirmed character is an unnamed dinosaur who for now we are calling Pianosaurus, a character who was only revealed through this corrupted image that people edited the image data on to remove the glitchiness, revealing a weird dinosaur design we've never seen before. And currently, there is basically nothing known about this character really, outside of his design clearly being inspired by the famous cat piano that meows every note, so I guess this one does dinosaur noises instead. Plus, for returning characters, we obviously know Poppy, Kissy Missy, and Ollie are all going to come back as allies, along with presumably the prototype, since he's basically the main villain, and even Harley Sawyer, who was revealed to still be alive in these Stories So Far videos released earlier this year. In terms of rumored characters, there are some rumors relating to leaks, which as a Poppy partner I can't really talk about, but there are also other rumored toys like Huggy Wuggy, which people think will return based on a number of factors, like us finding a Huggy plush in real life for the ARG that seemed to have been restored with strands of yarn, presumably by Yarnaby, possibly symbolizing after his fall into the depths below in Chapter 1, he could have met with Yarnaby, who repaired him, lining him up for his return. And other characters like Boxy Boo are also rumored after I interviewed the mob CEO Zach and asked him about Boxy possibly returning, where he said, "Stay tuned to find out, winky face," kinda sounding like it was meant to be a tease. In terms of how these characters will appear in Chapter 4, the developers in a number of interviews before anything Chapter 4 related was released, first told us that the new villain of Chapter 4 is the one they have been most excited about, and the design takes every unique advantage of being a Poppy Playtime toy monster, from the material choice to the animation, which, while we don't know who the main villain of the game will be, from the characters already confirmed to maybe some new ones we haven't seen yet, this is a really interesting statement. And on the Chapter 4 Steam description, they mentioned there being multiple new villains and multiple new allies, meaning of the characters we have so far, not only will some be bad guys, because of course, but some might also be our friends, which sounds super intriguing. Also, by the way, if you missed it, I just dropped some merch the other day, so make sure to check it out if you like the designs, and big shout out to the ones who've already picked it up. They'll be gone forever at the end of the month. Moving on to the Chapter 4 locations, currently we know of 3 places coming to the game. First, there's the flagship location, the prison, which is a place where experiments were contained, presumably while being tested or diagnosed, and the conditions of these prisons, from what we've seen, were notably extremely cruel, containing small little boxes, along with nozzles for red smoke to come through to force them to sleep like the orphans from Chapter 3's Playcare. The prison is also marked by its mysterious red square symbol, shown on the front entrance, in every room, on all storage boxes, and even documents related to the prison, but its purpose and reasoning is currently unknown. The second location is the caves, a large dark area seemingly used to store garbage and no longer living toys, almost like a graveyard, and otherwise is used as a proxy between the prison and the rest of the factory. Also, judged from this Chapter 4 screenshot we received from the Steam page, seeming like it's going to be a middle area between each room, kind of like what we saw in Chapter 3. Then finally, there's the storage area, the first area we see when going down the lift in Chapter 3, containing the prison storage boxes mentioned before, and directions through the factory, seeming to be the starting area of the chapter, kind of like the train station area of Chapter 3 or Elliot Ludwig's office area in Chapter 2. There's also a couple weird undefined locations, like this this one of a trash room that looks like it might be attached to the storage area, and this sewer slash tunnel room that looks like it's probably a part of the caves. Moving on to the gameplay and plot of chapter 4, while honestly the developers have been super silent and secretive about revealing anything in the chapter gameplay wise, we do know a couple of important things. First off, in terms of game changes, in the most recent trailer we saw the introduction of some kind of hand scanners that don't look like the ones we've seen in other chapters, and instead look like the kind of hand scanners you'd use to authorize high-class people into different areas, suggesting we might have to find a new higher-up employee's GrabPack or somehow bypass these restrictions. And speaking of hands, we also know there will at least be one kind of new hand or something in the game, since in chapter 3, after beating Catnap, he takes our green hand with him, giving us an open broken slot, which was a similar situation in chapter 2, where after Mommy Longlegs takes our red hand, we replaced it with something better, which will hopefully be the same case here. There's been rumors that the next hand will be a yellow hand, since they accidentally referred to the purple hand from chapter 3 as a yellow hand in the orientation notebook, so it's theorized they maybe mixed it up and that's the next color of hand. We also, of course, know this game is going to be much darker and scarier than any Poppy game so far, as they've said this a multitude of times in different podcasts and interviews, and it should go without saying that as we go deeper into the factory, the games are naturally going to be more mature and creepy. Plus, of course, the developers told us in older interviews the game will be the highest quality, most stable, and the best user experience of any game, so hopefully the reason we haven't heard much about chapter 4's gameplay is so Mob can cook for a little bit longer. And in terms of the plot, as the story goes, after losing Kissy Missy to some mysterious being, likely a chapter 4 character, we are forced down the lift with Poppy and have to explore the chapter 4 areas in search of Kissy, who was presumably kidnapped by said creature. Plus, according to Poppy, our main goal with entering the lift in the first place was to try and find and kill the prototype, so hopefully once we meet back with Kissy, hopefully not what was Kissy, then our goal will likely be to find and stop the prototype once and for all. And of course, while this is all we know or can comfortably infer about the gameplay and plot for now, there are hundreds of theories predicting more about the game. For instance, it's believed Poppy is going to betray us in this chapter in some way, as we have already seen Poppy being extremely suspicious, betraying us in chapter 2, before suddenly being all friendly with us again when she needed us in chapter 3. So clearly she is manipulating in some way, we just don't know how or when she will show her true colors. There's millions of theories on who Yarnaby is and why they exist. Like possibly if our previous theory about Huggy's repaired body from the ARG is true, then maybe Yarnaby was some kind of surgeon in charge of healing experiments inside the prison. And of course, there's tons of speculation on if we will learn more about the game's main villain, the prototype, who still hasn't revealed his full body from the Catnap Shrine to us or really done anything despite them being the focus of the entire game. So for now, most of the plot is up for speculation and only devs know what secrets could be hiding in the chapter. But perhaps most importantly, all of the game details aside, the next question is, when will the game actually release? We know according to the devs that it will drop at some point in January, but when in January? And when will we get a release date? Well, in terms of when we will know, Zach told me in my interview confidently that the release date will be fully revealed by the end of the year. So either this month in November or next month in December, presumably with some kind of trailer to go along with it, which is great. But in terms of what the release date will be when we finally get it, we saw back with chapter 3 that despite the game originally meant to be released in December, it had a small delay which pushed the game all the way back to the very end of January on January 30th. And a big reason for this delay taking so long over a month, outside of them obviously having to finish the game, is because Mob actually takes a big holiday break during a large portion of December and even the beginning of January. So I honestly highly doubt they would go ahead right off of a break and launch their main game's 4th chapter at the beginning of January, and at the earliest the game will drop in mid to late January. But that's also assuming the release date is even correct, because we also have to consider that so far literally every single Poppy Playtime release has been delayed at least once, sometimes twice, except for Project Playtime Phase 2. Chapter 2 was delayed by days, then a couple more hours. Project Playtime was delayed by a few days. Project Playtime Phase 3 was delayed by a few hours. Then Chapter 3 was delayed once from October 12th to a second time in December before finally releasing in January like planned. So to be honest, it's literally more likely than not that the devs will end up having to delay the chapter, at least when looking at the trends, especially since it's set to release before Chapter 3 will even turn 1 year old. So honestly, if I had to guess, I would still probably predict a release closer to February, even though they already confirmed it to release in January. But who knows? Anyway, that's all we know about the chapter. Make sure you're subscribed to not miss any updates in the future.